Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, Members of Public at the Gallery. Mr. Speaker, I rise to provide an update on the essential component of our work as part of the Ministry's role that is undertaken by my Ministry on the formulation, enforcement and compliance of the national minimum wages under the Employment Relations Act 2007. Mr. Speaker, a lot of false and misleading statements have been made on the review of the national minimum wage. And I want to quote what Honourable Tui Sawau posted on his Facebook. Where the hell is the minimum wage review, Bala? Where are the review? Why are you quiet? Others on social media and in Parliament claim the process has been delayed, taking it towards the election. Some said that the work has not begun, and so on. These are total fabrications, Mr. Speaker. Made up stories intended to mislead the Fijians. The fact speaks for itself and are very clear, as I will outline later in this address. Mr. Speaker, let me respond to all these outright lies and dishonest claims by the opposition. Mr. Speaker, during the 1960s, wages councils were established and regulated under the Wages Council Act 1960. This was a mechanism to set effective wages and decent employment conditions by way of wages regulation orders. This was to benefit and estimate over 70% of workers at that time in 1960s who were employed in various business sectors that were less fortunate to be protected by the trade union bodies. Mr. Speaker, I would like this August House to note that the percentage of workers who are currently affected by the minimum wage order is about 4%, estimated at just over 20,000 workers, according to the baseline survey. And these 20,000 plus Fijian workers matter greatly. This is why we have embarked on a comprehensive exercise to ensure that each minimum wage order brings with it a substantial yet viable increase for these 20,000 odd Fijian workers. And I will outline these increases and the processes towards the minimum wage orders later in this statement. Mr. Speaker, the Fijian Constitution states in Section 33, subsection 1, that the state must take reasonable measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of the right of every person to a just minimum wage. Mr. Speaker, a national minimum wage must ensure that vulnerable employees are not exploited, to provide decent wages, and that sets minimum wages do not discourage productivity and competition for employers. This is the balancing act, Mr. Speaker, at the heart of the process of fixing and applying a just minimum wage for all parties. And this is what the opposition parties do not bring into their calculation when it comes to the minimum wage. We must protect workers and we must protect employers, Mr. Speaker. We cannot afford to have in place a mechanism of political adjustment. Otherwise, the Fijian economy will not be viable for investment or productivity. We have heard their comments, and I'm sure they will keep on going on and on about the burden on workers. But they will not give a balanced view of affordability to employers. And let me point out, Mr. Speaker, many of these employed as casual laborers, housekeepers, or gardeners are done by individual householders, not just businesses. The national minimum wage covers workers in areas like backyard garage, domestic workers, farm laborers, car wash workers, and others who are not covered under the 10 regulated sectoral minimum wages. Mr. Speaker said there was no wages order for the seafarers in the review, but we have now included them as well. At this point, Mr. Speaker said, I must credit those employers who pay above minimum wages because their businesses can afford it and they can still run a viable enterprises. Mr. Speaker said it must be noted that it was only under the Fiji Affairs government and under the leadership of our Honourable Prime Minister that this country became compliant to the International Labour Organization Minimum Wage Fixing Machinery Convention number 26, which Fiji ratified in 1974. In line with ILO Convention 26, Section 33, subsection 1 of the Fijian Constitution, and the Fiji First Manifesto gave Fiji's first ever national minimum wage, whereby a national survey was conducted in 2013 and 2014. This resulted in a minimum wage rate of $2 an hour that came into force from the 1st March 2014. This benefited an estimated of 100,000 Fijian workers, who were prior to the introduction of the national minimum wages were paid some 70 cents to $1 an hour. Mr. Speaker said, I hope this puts to rest the harping going on about minimum wages as if it had existed under the previous government in proactive manner. To put it simply and firmly, it did not. It was only under the Fiji Affairs government has there been a well-structured application of the minimum wage order. The national minimum wage of $2 per hour was reviewed and implemented in 2015 within a span of 1.5 years. The new wages rate of $2.32 came into force from 1st July 2015. Mr. Speaker said the national minimum wage was again reviewed in 2017. The survey was undertaken in the formal and informal sectors from April-May 2017 throughout Fiji. In particular, in urban centers where small, medium and large enterprises were located. Mr. Speaker said the national minimum wage rate was increased to $2.68 from 30th September 2017 after a nationwide consultation. This resulted in an increase in the wages of ordinary workers to $128.65 on gross weekly wages. As these wages rates and annual income falls below the income tax threshold, most of the gross is take-home pay, except for the FNPF deduction, which in itself is compulsory savings for the workers. Mr. Speaker said, the new national minimum wage has given ordinary workers their right to just and fair minimum wages, which has benefited Fijian workers in terms of their needs. The opposition keeps on bringing different basket of goods to exemplify cost of living impact on minimum wages level. This is to support their old arguments that the minimum wage is not able to offer a basic living wage. Mr. Speaker said, the consultant for this current review did all the breakdowns and was satisfied that with other measures such as price control goods, a reasonable basket of goods was to be had from the current minimum wages, and with the current review and based on previous examples, this basket will only get bigger with another increment in the minimum wage order. Mr. Speaker said, following Cabinet endorsement for a comprehensive review of the 2017 National Minimum Wage and Wages Regulation, a nationwide survey was conducted from 17th April to 10th May 2019 for the formal and informal sectors, followed by public consultation from 23rd May to 5th June 2019 in all town and city centers, which was followed by a consultation with the key stakeholders. A sample size of massive 4,500 workers participated in the nationwide survey. Mr. Speaker said, the survey revealed that 65% of the workers in the informal sector are earning above an hourly living wage rate of $2.90 per hour. About 31% of the workers are already earning a wage rate of $4 an hour in Fiji. Mr. Speaker said this survey shows that over 96% of the Fijian workers currently earn above the minimum wage rate. Therefore, my earlier reference to the 4% or just over 20,000 workers are affected by this. And as per the Fiji First mandate, that every Fijian matter, and that means no matter how low percentage, the minimum wage rate for this sector must be looked into, so that it reflects the current economic conditions and what a just minimum wages is according to that. Mr. Speaker said, in the last general election, parties made a lot of minimum wages and in their big blown out promises of big dollars, neglected to tell the true story of what minimum wages are about and what percentage of the Fijian workers who get affected by it. Mr. Speaker said, I hope that facts and figures I have outlined in this regard make sense to the sensible, intelligent Fijian workers that we know we have and assures them of a sustainable and a fair minimum wage. I know they have no time for false promises of huge, impractical wages rates. Mr. Speaker said, as part of the National Minimum Wage Review process, the consultant will be presenting the 2019 National Minimum Wage Review report within the next month, after which it will be taken through our tripartite mechanism, the Employment Relation Advisory Board, and then to the Cabinet. Mr. Speaker said, I must hear, for the benefit of those who have been playing political football with this issue and jumping the gun on this matter, to respect the process and its outcome that, as I have just outlined, set the increases in minimum wage rate over the past decade. Moreover, Mr. Speaker said, as outlined as per our benchmark survey, more than 96% are paid above minimum wages because their employers see fit and can pay these rates. Mr. Speaker said, this government strongly believes in consultation and cooperation. It is unfortunate to note the workers' representatives did not attend the public consultation to provide a voice for the workers in Fiji, which they preach they represent. In addition to the above, Mr. Speaker said, unions again failed to attend the formal tripartite board meeting last year. This is indeed very sad for the workers, and totally, and I must add totally, puts the rest to the opposition claims that this government is not consultative. Come to the table, talk, consult, dialogue, talanwa. That is why you are union reps. Do not play politics and hide from the tripartite forums and then claim that you were not part of the process. Come to the table and have discussions in good faith, not in bad faith, in finding a way forward that is best for the workers and employers in Fiji. Mr. Speaker said the people of Fiji, and in particular the workers, need to know what their trade unionists are claiming and the truth of their lack of commitment. Therefore, this absence from the tripartite forum. But today I would like to renew my call, Mr. Speaker said, and I invite the union leaders to come and attend the Europe meetings. Mr. Speaker said, at this point, let me repeat an earlier point and thank all employers who are paying their workers above the national minimum wage, as it gives confidence to our national economy. Mr. Speaker said, at the same time, for those employers who do not comply, my ministry is empowered by the Employment Relation Act 2007 to conduct proactive labor inspection, advising employers and workers on the provision of the minimum terms and conditions of employment. Currently, around 80% of the workforce in Fiji are non-unionized and are not covered under any collective agreement. As such, these minimum terms and conditions enforced by the ministry are applicable to these workers for payment of their dues by their respective employers. Mr. Speaker said, my ministry conducts proactive labor inspection to employers and workers in ensuring that the terms and conditions are in compliance by each employer, including the enforcement of the 10 wages regulation and the national minimum wage applicable to the informal sector. Mr. Speaker said, ministry through proactive labor inspection and Compliance Investigation has from 1st March 2014 till 31st January 2020 has conducted a total of 5,534 inspections in the national minimum wage sector. Mr. Speaker said the overall recovery of wages from the 10 sectoral minimum wages and the national minimum wage from 2014 till January 2020 stands at over $8 million, which has been paid out to the workers by the ministry to ensure that they are given just and fair minimum wage entitlement. Mr. Speaker said, unfortunately, these figures reflect badly on some of our small and medium enterprises in these sectors, as well as some of the big business players. They are not meeting the minimum wage order entitlement or other aspects of the Employment Act. The people of Fiji can be rest assured, Mr. Speaker said, that all such breaches, no matter how small or big, shall be taken to task. We have a zero-tolerance policy towards this, and we shall continue to ensure that every Fijian worker is paid every single cent she or he is entitled to. Mr. Speaker said, the national minimum wages is an integral part of my ministry's compliance and enforcement program that will ensure that we reach out to all Fijian workers in our search for better wages conditions and better employment relations to both employers and the workers. This will ensure that we maintain a productive and balanced workforce to contribute to the growth and development of the respective industries and our nation as a whole. Mr. Speaker said, we will continue to consult our Fijians in the area of national minimum wages together with the sectoral-based minimum wages to ensure that we have a balanced and practical approach in setting up the national minimum wage. Mr. Speaker said, it is the effort and profound vision of this government that has given the workers their rights in getting just and fair wages. And Mr. Speaker said, we will continue to do so in a just and systematic manner to ensure that minimum wages provided for all Fijians. And moving forward, Mr. Speaker said, as we grow our economy and increase productivity, we will have a fair share to utilize and increase our minimum wage and indeed the market wage rates for all Fijians. Mr. Speaker said, I thank this August House for their patience and attention to my contribution. I felt very comfortable today. The environment was very good. And thank you, Mr. Speaker said, Naka.